Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Lineup. I'm Joshua Adams, joined by Jeffrey Matthews and Christensen. On the show today, we're going to talk about how our favorite teams, the Royals, the Cubs, and the Braves, are going to be doing this season, what we expect out of them. Then we're going to talk about tanking, because a lot of teams this season are expecting to not necessarily be competing for the best spot rather than the last spot to try and get the best draft pick. And after that, we're going to discuss Barry Bonds and steroids in general, if it's good for the game, because some people actually thought it was good for the game after the strike. And then we're going to discuss what character qualifications need to be there in order to make the Hall of Fame. But as always, we will start with quick pitch, and Jeff will discuss the APSU softball and how they're doing.
Alrighty. Softball did not get off to a very good start. They were down in Georgia last weekend, and then a lot of their games, about 4 of them got canceled against Radford and then Georgia Southern. They did end up losing 3 of the 8 games. And then, so that was a little rough. And then this past, I do believe it was yesterday, they played Alabama A&M, and they actually won that game, so that was good. And so now they're sitting at a record of 1-3, and their next game is going to be on the 23rd, and that's going to be down in, I already forgot. So at that point, I'm going to go ahead and pitch it on over to Christian.
It'll be down somewhere.
Alrighty. Well, in baseball, guys, Austin Peay has not begun yet. They're still awaiting their season, but it is supposed to start this Friday, weather permitting. We'll get to that in a second because the OVC has come out with their preseason polls. They have been picked to finish 7th. And 7th is where they finished last year. Coach Travis Jansen, obviously not too happy about that pick. He feels like now the conference is evened out a lot more, so he feels like they've got a better chance. They do have some returners, including Parker Phillips. He was a redshirt freshman last year, but he did set the Austin Peay freshman home run record last year, so that was pretty impressive. They're looking forward to having him back. In terms of other guys, the coach is not expecting near the home runs, not so much of the big ball, but he does think that he has a lineup capable of getting guys on base. And then lastly, in terms of the mound, which is obviously key, especially in this conference, thanks to the big offenses. He says that they've got some weapons that some people have yet to see. So no names yet. Season hasn't started. We'll just wait to find out who Coach Jansen has in store for the future. But that's where they're at on baseball. Season does start on Friday. Supposed to kick off at, first pitch at 3 p.m. But due to the rain, not sure if we'll see any. So.
And hey, if anyone that game, they can hear you on the PA, right?
That's right. I will have the PA for this weekend. Yes, sir. Right. Yes, sir.
So for our first fleshed out topic today, we're going to we're going to get a little personal and discuss our favorite teams and what we expect out of our favorite teams. And Jeff, we're going to start with you. How do you think the Braves are going to do this year?
All right. So the Braves, they're looking pretty good right now. They've had a couple of years that have definitely been a struggle. We haven't really done much in the past few years, but I think this year, they're definitely looking to go for it this year. Some of the top 2 names for our pitching lineup, we have about 2 spots left open in the
rotation.
Thank you. I can't speak today, apparently. We have Sean Newcomb and Luis Cajara. Both of those are kind of fighting for those 2 positions right there. So those are the 2 that are probably going to get it. But then again, spring training, anything can happen. And so these other names like Max Fried, Lucas Sims, and Scott Kazmir, they're all available, and so we're going to have to just see how the Braves go. The solid players we have that are definitely in the rotation, Julio Teheran, Max Fultzonovich, and Brandon McCarthy, those are our solid pitchers right there, so we're going to definitely be sticking with those. Like I said, we just have those 2 spots available. Another one of our top prospects, outfielder Ronald Acuna. He's coming out of Gwinnett. He's definitely our number 1 prospect as of right now. He reported to spring training early, and he's down there in Orlando right now, and he's definitely going to be fighting for that spot. Atlanta's looking to replace Matt Kemp. They traded him to the Dodgers this past, I think it was in December is when they traded him. Right now, Lane Adams is playing that outfield position, but they're definitely looking to move Ronald Acuna into the outfield for them. I think they're just trying to wait and see if they want to hold him back and try to get that another year of control on. And then one more thing, Brandon Phillips coming from second base. He's now at third base. And I think overall one of Atlanta's goals is to try to find a more permanent solution to the third base position. After Chipper Jones had left, that kind of left third base open. And so they've never really had someone that's been there solid continuously. And so I think that's definitely something that the Braves are going to be looking at into spring training and hopefully fill that position.
Yeah, and Ronald Acuna is a top 5 prospect in baseball as a whole.
He made number 2, actually.
number 2?
He was the number
Okay.
2 prospect for all of MLB. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so it's not necessarily a competitive year for the Braves, but this is kind of on the upswing of
Yeah.
what our second topic will be soon, the tank.
And one more thing, the Braves, I do believe, if I read it correctly, the Braves had about $10 million to spend this season, or this offseason. And I think if they play their cards right, they will end up having about $50 million next offseason. So they're definitely trying to look to have that big cash right there to get some better big players and start moving this team back to, where they were in the 90s, winning all of their divisions and series and stuff.
The big 3.
The big, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the 2018-2019 offseason is going to be huge because Harper is going to be out there, Kershaw, Machado. It's going to be big for a lot of people. The Cubs this year are looking really good after they signed Darvish. I mean, it might have officially catapulted them into super team territory because they have essentially 3, you could even make an argument for 4 pitchers that would be a number 1 starter on another team because they have Darvish, they have Lester, they have Hendricks, and they have Quintana. And they have Chatwood, which you could make an argument that he might even be a number 1 starter on a lesser team, maybe. But the Cubs are looking really good this year, and some people actually are saying that they're World Series favorites this year.
Yeah, I don't know about the favorite thing. You got some lingering teams. The Yankees are still hanging.
Yeah,
around.
the Yankees, with their catastrophic middle of the order with Stanton and Judge and what's his catcher's name, Sanchez.
Yeah.
I mean, they alone might hit 200 home runs.
It should be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. But, for the Royals, I'm going to go ahead and say that we had our up and up when we had our up and up, all right? Easy now on the laughs, okay? Come on, guys. We, obviously, 2014, 2015 were big for us, big years. That being said, a lot of those guys who ended up making that team and really being the set in stone, who was going to be the consistent ones, they've pretty much said goodbye. We can no longer afford them. So you take a look at guys like Mike Moustakas, Eric Hosmer, and places like that. That's going to be an issue in the lineup. That being said, I think the outlook on this team is a little more negative than what they'll actually play to. Sure, we missed the playoffs last year. Did finish just under 500, so that was kind of rough. But in terms of what they're capable of, the closing pitching, I know that's been an issue. Kelvin Herrera has been a talk, but he did lose his job last year, looking like he's the top guy right now, though. So not really sure what we'll see from the Royals. That being said, I look forward to it, just as every year. The program has changed drastically from 5-6 years ago, so I'm looking forward to it.
So the Royals aren't necessarily in this category, but in general, a lot of teams are tanking right now. You could say the Marlins. You could make an argument for the Braves-ish. They're kind of on the upswing of the tank. For those of y'all that don't know, the term tank means they are intentionally losing in order to get a better draft pick to be better in a few years with those draft picks that they get. But I mean, there's the Marlins, there's the Braves. You could again make an argument that the Pirates are doing it because they traded away their best pitcher and Andrew McCutchen. Yeah. So you could make an argument that they're throwing this season away. The Royals, they're kind of in
tough.
That middle category. They're the middle class of baseball a little bit, which is kind of funny because middle of the nation, middle class of baseball too.
There you go.
Yeah, that's funny. The Reds, I don't know what to think of the Reds because if they had a pitching staff. They would be a good team. They have great offense, they have great defense, and terrible pitching. I mean, their number 1 starter, I think, was Brandon Finnegan. Yeah, well, which he was great for the Royals the year that he played in the College World Series and the actual World Series in a single season. Yeah. But after that, he's just not panned out. And Homer Bailey has just been dead in the water for like 3 years with injuries. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of teams, and I mean, like you take a look at even teams like the Giants last year, where they finished up. That is rough. Like there's a lot of teams that finished a lot lower. I mean, the Phillies too. They finished way down there. The A's not exactly anywhere close. Same with the Tigers. You look at all those teams that finished at the bottom last year, and it makes you wonder which ones are actually trying to take that same route. Like most people say that it's roughly 5 years that they like to say the cycle happens to where by that 5th year they're at least decent, or they make the playoffs, or they go over 500. Some teams don't have a lot of expectations. A team I told you guys pre-show, like the Colorado Rockies, like you take a look at their past 5-6 years, rough.
like just rough. And now, after last year, it was somewhat kind of like how you said the Braves on that upswing. This year, they're projected top 5, top 10 in a lot of polls. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing what they do, and I doubt we'll see any tanking from them.
Yeah, and they made the wild card last year.
Yeah.
They just lost to the Diamondbacks and Archie Bradley with that bases clearing triple. Might have been 2 runners on base, but so yeah, that was just rough luck for the Rockies that their best pitcher just didn't pan out that time.
My whole thing with tanking in general, and I'm just speaking very in general, is to me, tanking is the problem I have with it is you're taking baseball and you're trying to make it too much of a business. And I know baseball has become this big, huge organization, the MLB. A lot of these teams, there's a lot of money that's involved. However, in my personal opinion, I wish that wasn't a thing. I wish tanking wasn't a thing. I wish the draft wasn't a thing in some aspects. I think at some point, can we just play ball?
Yeah, well, okay, so see, there's 2 ways to look at this. From the fans' perspective, absolutely. From the fans' perspective, they're sitting here thinking, yes, we have got to just play ball. We should be trying to win every year. Mm-hmm. But the owners, the managers, and even some of the players are sitting back and they're looking at that big picture and they're thinking, well, I really think that this is something in the long run that will benefit us. But it's really tough to make those decisions because you do have those Cinderella stories, and it just makes you wonder if it's all about that skill, youth, or if it's with what you got. So
for me, I think it's personal preference because some people would rather have that middling team that is kind of hovering around 500, but other people would rather have a poor team out there in order to get a great team in a few years, and I am a part of that group.
For sure.
So after the break, we are going to talk about Barry Bonds, steroids, and whether the Hall of Fame character clause is fair. Join us after this.
Oh, 1 hit high and deep.
Back of the end zone. Brown got it.
Moore drives inside, put it up. This one swung and missed it.
Now Smith again. Block point tech.
Nice turnaround by Johnson.
Near post.
Kick in.
Any place, anytime. Find it here. The OBC Digital Network.
How will you lead to a better future? Will you lead through life-changing innovations? Or will your leadership shine through the quality of your work? Success is defined by the individual. So it's time to think about the person you want to be and where you will learn to lead through excellence. It's time to become a governor at Austin Peay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the lineup. Joined by Christensen, and I almost said Joshua Adams for you. That is not Joshua Adams,
Correct.
That's Jeffrey Matthews. I am Joshua Adams. So this year, Barry Bonds' number is going to be retired by the San Francisco Giants, and I am among the members that don't believe it should be retired because he is a tainted player. It's pretty obvious that he did steroids after he broke the all-time home run record. He had we don't get too much into stats, but he had an OPS over 1,000, which if it is over 1,000, you're a superstar. You are an amazing player. And not a single person wanted him. I don't remember which team, but one team issued an offer, but then withdrew it without giving reason. And some people think Bud Selig might have said, no, you're not offering him anything.
Yeah.
He was willing to work for league minimum, which still is 10 times more than any of us will make in a single year in our lives.
Easy now, man. Easy. Jeez. We got futures here. Let's put them on the line like that.
Big
Holy
dreams.
cow. All right. Well, whatever. Anyway.
So do you think Barry Bonds should make the Hall of Fame? Because obviously he is one of the best hitters of all time, and steroids don't make you a good hitter. They just make you hit it further. But where do you sit on it, Christian?
My biggest issue is that obviously it takes a certain skill to get to the league. I get that. And I get that steroids are not your everything. That being said, you have to look at what we're going to talk about a little later, but the idea of what qualifies you for that Hall of Fame, what qualifies you to get your jersey number retired. And I just can't see how someone who uses performance-enhancing drugs to get to a certain level can be put in the marks of history yes, they did absolutely over and above what many, many players have ever done. And statistically, there's no doubt that a guy like this should get in. That being said, when you're using certain things to do that, when you're deflating footballs or you're doing certain things to do that, I don't see how that is going to necessarily give you the right to be. And that being said, I still think Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. Sorry, not even a Pats fan. Anyway, moving on back into baseball.
Right.
But really though, it's just the idea that the cheating is just ridiculous, and I don't see how you can have.
I think, when you're growing up, the age-old saying is cheaters never win. And if you give him this retired jersey, you're letting him win. And you're showing to everybody else, no matter if you cheat, no matter if you use these drugs, if you're good enough, you'll still win.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's sending a very wrong message to children who are getting into the game. I think that's sending a message to children who are in high school, who are even in college. If I get to the majors, I'll just use steroids and then I'll still be able to make the Hall of Fame if that happens. Yeah. And if they say they're retiring his jersey, if that happens, you're still giving him a level of something of gratitude, saying he did a great job here, and I think that is wrong. And I think we're all in agreement that me personally, I do not believe his jersey should be retired. Yeah. I think, to be honest, that's a stain on their organization.
Yeah, and it's then it becomes a morality issue because obviously the major leagues cracked down on it after things went about and more players' names started to come out of the woodwork. The major leagues cracked down on it, so it's a little hard to get away with nowadays. It kind of cracks me up. The timing that the professional sports will send those random tests to them, especially when it's a really good player. But I do think, like you said, it is somewhat of a blemish. One of the reasons that this guy, I do believe, will eventually get into the Hall of Fame, I don't think it's going to be this year, but as the years go by, writers that vote for it will eventually be the ones who watched him as a kid and never really saw, the bad news about him. So they will eventually vote him in. That being said, it's just really, really, really annoying knowing that there are guys that get in that way.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because you have Barry Bonds, you have Manny Ramirez, which with his stats, he should be in the Hall of Fame as well.
Statistically, both of them.
Yeah, but he was convicted of steroid use and was suspended. Mm-hmm. And he was actually suspended his last year and said, I'm just going to retire. Yeah. David Ortiz was convicted of steroid use, but he was never suspended for it because there was some weirdness with the report. Yep. Obviously, Alex Rodriguez was was convicted of steroid use. Ryan Braun, but all those players are fringe, if not surefire Hall of Famers with their stats, but because of the steroid use, they aren't going to get in. But then there's Ryan Braun, who only got an MVP, and then he lied about it. He lied about taking steroids, and he tried to ruin multiple people's careers. And even a lot of Brewers fans don't like him now because of that.
Well, you could, here's just an option. Nobody's going to really take this into account. You could just put a massive asterisk next to their names on everything in the Hall of Fame and say, we're not really sure about this guy, but we think he put something in his body to make him, post these numbers. So his name will still be in there, but everybody's going to see those names and remember all the backlash that comes with it, unless they never experienced it. So
the guy that caught Barry Bonds' record-breaking home run branded it with an asterisk. And the ball in the Hall of Fame is sitting there with the asterisk right there.
Oh, hey, nice.
It's great.
Didn't even know that. Did not even know that. So that sounds good.
So with that, there are a lot of players that are not getting into the Hall of. Not a lot of players. There are some players that are not getting into the Hall of Fame, whether it be because Pete Rose, who bet on his games. He bet on both teams at one point in his career, whether it was his team or the opposing team, he bet on them. There's players like Edgar Martinez, where he is statistically a better DH than David Ortiz ever was. But because he wasn't the most popular and he wasn't a beloved player, he's struggling getting in. He keeps inching a little closer, but he's not there.
Yeah, for sure. I actually want to go to you about this because we talked about this a little bit. In terms of character, and getting into the Hall of Fame, do you think that it should be based on something off the field as well, or is it strictly on the field play?
I think there's a level of it that has to be on the field and off the field, especially on the field, obviously, because that's how you play the game. However, off the field, I think of it, in my personal opinion, I like to think of it as a business, and that's where, sometimes business and baseball. But let's say I'm a CEO of a company and I have a high-ranking member of my staff, and they go out and, they do all these things and they make my company look bad and they make my name look bad. I kind of like to think of it in that terms because I feel like it does matter. I think your character off the field should definitely have a say in what you, and if you can get into the Hall of Fame. On the other note, I do feel like the Hall of Fame is definitely almost, and I don't know if many people would agree with me on this, but I would definitely say it's a good old boy system. I think if you know the right people and you become friends with the right people, I think you have no problem getting into the Hall of Fame. And one thing that I would bring up with that is Andrew Jones, played for the Braves. He's definitely been on the ballot numerous times to be in the Hall of Fame. However, he's never made it. Some people don't know why. My personal opinion is because he had a couple of great years and he did a lot of great things in baseball, and then he kind of slowly disappeared. And he disappeared. He didn't really, do anything. He didn't talk to much people. He wasn't much of, networking. And so I feel like since he did not have enough connections and he did not know enough people, and then he just kind of withered away in the world of baseball, I do believe that's why he is not in the Hall of Fame as of right now.
There is a statistical argument for Andrew Jones not being in there because he did have a great peak. He did have a great few years, but it was shorter than most Hall of Fame players, and the drop-off was more severe than most Hall of Fame players. So that's why some people think that he shouldn't get in, because the peak was too short and the drop-off was too harsh afterwards, because he was incredibly athletic, one of the best defensive center fielders of all time. And he was a great hitter as well, but as soon as he started gaining weight, he was just immobile out there and just became a slugger.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I just think, like we said, I think Andrew Jones, if you're in the world of baseball, you know that name. You know the name Andrew Jones. I think one thing you have to look at with the Hall of Fame is, did you leave your mark in baseball? Did you put enough stamp on this sport to inspire people, to get people to talk about baseball, to get people into baseball? And I think Andrew Jones did that, and I think that's something that people have not considered when they voted for the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's not just this sport either. You look at other sports around the league, or just around the United States in general, and when you try to decide who it is that's going to make it and who's not, the question for me is, where do you draw the line? If you want to draw the line on statistics, draw the line on statistics. If you want to draw the line on statistics and morality, draw it on that. If you want to draw it on statistics, morality, how nice of a guy he was, whether he had a firm handshake, if he actually showed up to every practice, if you didn't ask too much from the teams, blah, 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 fine, draw it there. But when you take all those writers, it's nearly humanly impossible to just tell them, hey, who's the best player? What are you talking about in regards of the best? Because yes, there are the best of the best in hitting percentage. There are the best of the best in terms of ERA. You can take that all day long, or like you said, leaving your mark. How good was this guy in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs over the course of his 15-year career? He may have just left his mark in that area, but how was he in the locker room? Do guys like him? You take guys like Terrell Owens in football, or you take other guys like, I can't think of one right off the top of my head in baseball, but there's just so many guys like that they're going to get in someday. It's just a matter of forgetting their personal stuff, or the people who didn't necessarily experience their personal side. That's confusing for me. I don't know where you put that line. I really don't. Because then if you start to talk about morality, you have to establish what the morals are. There's so much that goes into it. That's why I think the Hall of Fame is kind of a, there's like, congratulations, you made the Hall of Fame. People know if you were good or not. Like, that's just my thing on it. But yeah.
All right, so we're going to send it to a break for one last time, and when we come back, we're going to do a new segment called Baseball 101, and we'll discuss the infield fly rule. Join us after this. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the lineup. This is going to be a new segment. We'll kind of switch out the last segment back and forth between Green Light and this, and maybe some others if we come up with more. This is going to be the first edition of Baseball 101, and we're going to discuss the infield fly rule because even some ardent, is that even a word? I don't know. I was going to say avid. There it is, avid. Found
there
it.
you go.
Okay.
Baseball fans don't even understand the infield fly rule.
Yeah.
And recently with the Braves, there was a bit of a mix-up in a game that caught, and we'll discuss that after I explain the rule. Where
Not about recently.
It wasn't recent.
It was
back to
2012.
back to 2012.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
The infield fly rule is if there's a runner on first and second, or the bases are loaded, a pop-up in the infield with less than 2 outs. A pop-up in the infield that if the infielder were to drop it, it would keep. It would cause a double play. It could cause a double play if they intentionally dropped it and the runners would have to run to the next bag. It's preventing them from doing that. So essentially it's to prevent that kind of dirty cheating that occurred in the early days of baseball. It can be called on an outfielder even if the outfielder is close enough to where they could do a play like that. But the player has to be camped under the ball. It has to be obvious that he can catch it. He's just looking right up at the ball. Yeah. He's just waiting for it to drop.
For sure.
That's when it has to be. And the infielder can run a ways into the outfield, but it's only if it's high enough that he can camp under it and just sit there and wait for it, which is not the case with Pete Kozma and during the wild card game for the Atlanta Braves.
The wild card game, Atlanta Braves versus the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, hey, for because we don't have a clip of it today, give it a shot. Give it a 2012 the Braves versus the Cardinals infield fly. You will definitely see it. And the biggest issue that I had with it was the guy who made the call. If you look all the way down the third base line, normally there is not an umpire that stands between third base and the left field wall, like all the way to the back. And he was standing right almost at the length where the left fielder stands. And normally until those games they don't have umpires there, so it's not a normal place for him to sit, stand, whatever. He's the guy who makes the call, and that's rough because he's trying to make it from a position that he normally would not be in. So yes, I did give it another look after not seeing it for so long. And what an awful call.
It's pretty rough.
It was bad. It was really bad. I will definitely give you that. There's a lot, but that's the thing, though. Human error in baseball, guys. That's what makes the sport what it is, and that's why people love it so much. If you go to robots calling outs and strikes and balls, guys, things are going to get really technical. And the thing about human error is that it kind of keeps that human aspect of the game. That's what's going to happen.
And I think one thing just about baseball in general is arguing with umps is part of the game almost.
They're some of the most disrespected referees in all of sports.
Absolutely. I think I saw earlier at one point, I was reading up on the Major League, and I think umpires were starting to wear wristbands to promote awareness about them having derogatory terms.
I forgot about that.
Yelled at them.
Yeah, there was just a period where there was a lot of kind of discord towards umpires. There was just a period where people were not happy with the umpires. Yeah. So they started wearing a white wristband, and basically everyone was just like,
okay.
Okay. Cool.
I will admit though that I do get to umpire in the summers, and I love it. And the chippiness can sometimes be exciting. Other times, fellas, you don't want to be behind home plate. That's just it's rough.
Yeah. So. It's an interesting, situation with that game. It was, as a Braves fan, heartbreaking. Yeah. But it is what it is, and they move on.
Hopefully further up this year.
That's right.
All righty, fellas.
Yeah, it looks like that's it for today.
Yeah.
So that's all the time we have today. For Christenson and Jeffrey Matthews, I'm Joshua Adams. Thank you for watching the lineup, and see you at the same time next week.